Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps to get my channel promoted, and I really appreciate that. I also really love it when you leave comments, so feel free to tell me what you think about the project, ideas for other projects, constructive criticism, telling me how you do things. I always like to hear those sorts of things, so leave a comment. So I mentioned last week in one of my videos that I've been thinking about doing an insect pendant, and I think I'm going to do a bee or a wasp pendant today. So I picked out a little oval 10 by 12 amber and a black onyx to be kind of two parts of his body. I'm going to make some wings that have kind of a stylized veining pattern in them, and I'll tell you how I came up with that when we get to it. But I think it'll be a fun piece, and I've made some other insects before, and later on I'll put a link in the video to some of those other ones so you can see some other things I've done like that. But before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I really appreciate not only their financial support, but the great community that they've created over there. It's one of the nicest groups of people that I've run across, so I really appreciate them sharing their knowledge, and I hope they're getting as much out of it as I am. So thanks for that, you guys. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 12,700, I think it was. So we're getting up there pretty high, and that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I also appreciate the kind comments that you leave. Sometimes they're very moving, and I appreciate that. And also, thank you for the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. Those really help with the supplies as they've gone up in price significantly in the past few months. So thanks for that. All right, well, let's get started on making a bee. These are a couple of my design idea books. This is the one I'm finishing out right now. It has been good for me to, since I started doing the YouTube channel, I started sketching out the things that I was going to make in advance, at least crudely, in order to get an idea where I'm going with things, and it has really helped me to produce a better outcome, I think. So if you're interested in these, they're in the merch store. I have some new ones up there that have conversions on the back. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters. There's another one that has wire gauge to millimeters as well, for those of you overseas who don't use American wire gauges. So I find those to be handy. Here's what I'm doing today, and I'll show you some pieces I pre-made just to kind of get an idea where I was going. I got this black onyx here. It's going to be this guy's kind of main body. I have a piece of Baltic amber here that's a 10 by 12, and I pre-made a couple of wings that are going to go kind of like this, one on top of the other one. And I did a kind of a stylized veining pattern in them. And the reason I did that, one of the things I do on my Patreon over there is I give them periodically a video about coming up with ideas using different techniques. And the one I did last week was pulled out a spirograph and was playing with a spirograph, and it had some, you know, interlocking kind of cool patterns. I don't think let's see, where did I put that one? Stuff like this, and it reminded me of just how cool that would be for some wings, maybe if we took a segment out of that. And so that's basically the origin of that. So if you're interested in checking out my Patreon and some of the things going on over there, I'll put a link up there for you. But every month I'm going to give them a unique, out-of-the-box thinking, kind of come up with ideas video. So that's going to be my wings, and I made them a little bigger than I drew here. And originally I was going to use just kind of an elongated silver ball there. I was going to try and get it to be a little bit misshapen and not use the stone, but instead I decided to take some low dome half round, which is, I think it's number 4. Low dome half round number 4. It's the kind that's 5.89 millimeters wide, and that's going to be how I attach these two stones together. So I'm going to grind away a curved part once I make the bezel for this guy. And I think on the bottom, I'm going to have an open back bezel with a little border on the inside. I'm going to put some stripes across it to give it that kind of a bee kind of look. And I may point this to a stinger at the end, but I'm not sure. I'm kind of playing that one by ear, see how it looks. The legs I'm going to make out of 14 gauge round, and I'm going to do some creative filing and dremeling to give them that shape. And I made a couple little silver balls for his eyes. So we'll see how this goes. There's a number of steps here. I'm probably going to show you how I'm doing it, and I'll make a wing in front of you, but I'll do the second wing off camera, so you don't have to watch me do the same thing over and over again. But I'll probably solder them together and mount them at the in front of the camera. So to start with, though, let's make a bezel for this with an open back and some little lines going across it, and then we'll see about putting that border around the outside and whether I want it to be pointy or not like that. So for the bezel, I'm going to use 3/16 inch fine silver bezel, and that is 4.76 millimeters tall. I'm going to use 26 gauge, and I don't remember what that is thickness wise. I'll put it in the description of the video. So it's a little bit thicker than some. Amber is a little bit on the soft side. Actually, it's a lot on the soft side, so I'm going to kind of be careful when I'm doing stuff around it. I haven't been able to find any calibrated amber cabs lately. I've had this one for a long time, and I think it's the last one I have. It's funny, when Jurassic Park came out, all of a sudden amber was very popular, and so you started to see the market being flooded by fake amber, a lot of which was plastic. And one way you can tell is if you have a spot on it where you can touch a hot piece of metal to it and smell the smoke. It should smell like not plastic or petrochemicals, it should smell like kind of a pine sap is what it smells like to me. They actually use amber and copal, which is same kind of tree resin, just not quite as old as amber, as incense. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for most things. And I use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux right now, which is I either dribble on or I spray on. In this case, I'm going to dribble. A little bit of solder here, so I'm just going to put a piece right on there. This is probably going to be more of an intermediate or an advanced kind of project, so if you're brand new to this, you might want to pick something a little bit simpler. Let's just do some reshaping now. Whenever you're doing an oval bezel for a cab, I always put the solder joint on the long side of the oval. That way you don't have to curve it quite as much, as that's usually a harder spot, just because of the different metals in the solder. Okay, I have a little bit of 14 or 16 gauge square that I'm going to use, that I used for the previous project. So let's shape this to fit just inside of there, so we can have an open back bezel, and then we can put those little stripes across it. Square wire has a tendency to twist on you when you're using it, when you're trying to bend it sharply. So you may need to stop periodically and correct any kind of twist it's trying to do. Size-wise, we're pretty close. I think I need to take just a tiny bit more out of there. Not much, though. Just a skosh. So let's solder that closed, and then I'll shape it a little better. And then I may need to file it on the outside a little bit to get it to fit snugly in there. After I get it all shaped and snug, then I'm going to make those little stripes that go across. So let's solder that closed. My torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch. I use the #1 tip generally. It's a great torch. There we go. Fits in there nicely. You can see that. Now, I want a couple of stripes going across there. So, maybe do one in the middle and one on either side. How about that? Okay, let's solder that one in. I have a bunch of little pieces of solder here. I do something called pick soldering, which is where I use this pick to pick up little bits of solder and then heat the piece up to the soldering temperature and then just touch it where it goes, and that makes it easy to place solder pretty much exactly where you want in the amount that you want. So if you're interested in learning how to do that, put a link right up here for you, up there. It'll be easier to file it flat while it's outside of the bezel. So let's get that all smoothed out. push that down in there. I'm going to cut a little bit more solder. I'm actually going to lay a few pieces on the pad, flux this, set it on top of it so that it will be touching the bezel and that little piece, and then it should flow right up in there. And when we put it in there later, should be able to see the stripes through there, hopefully. Okay, so now, I was thinking, let's put a stinger on there. That'll be long enough, I think, but I'm going to do some further shaping. I want to make sure that this touches all the way around nicely. If you don't, when you solder something to the outside of a bezel like this, and it's got gaps in it, it looks pretty amateurish. So we're going to try and get a good seam here where it goes all the way around. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is solder this together, and then I'll do any kind of shaping I need to do to get this to fit in there snugly, rather than trying to get it exact. I got it pretty close. Let's make sure these are laying flat. We'll just solder that together. Okay, that looks pretty good. So just the same way that I did the inside piece, make sure this is sitting flush with the bottom, and then we'll put a couple more pieces up here with this hard silver sheet solder. We'll do a little final cleanup later, but that looks pretty good. So I want this to be attached here. I want it to be more like that. So I'm going to actually just use a sanding wheel on my rotary tool, and we're going to carve kind of a shape like that. So I'll be right back. So I've got these kind of sanded down. I used just a sanding wheel on my Dremel. We'll just solder those two together like that. And then we'll clean it up, and then we'll start, I think, adding legs, antennas, and eyeballs. I made that other bezel in advance just to save time, since we're doing a kind of a complicated project. I wanted to thank all the people who've downloaded my ebook. I just made an ebook that's a guide to all the all the videos I did in 2023. And it includes things like a picture of the sketch I drew, a picture of the final product, list the materials, the difficulty rating, some annotations I made about the individual project, as well as a link right to the video. So it's kind of a nice way to have a whole bunch of different projects right at your fingertips. And at 3 videos per week, that's over 150 videos with, you know, notes and materials and difficulty ratings and stuff. So it's kind of a nice guide, especially if you're a beginner and you want lots of projects to try. So we'll put a link up here if you want to check that out. Okay, I'm going to take a knife edge white wheel and smooth that out to where those two join together nicely. It's pretty straight, so I'll be right back. So I have a couple of silver balls I made out of some scrap right here. Let's see what that says. Oops, don't go away. And I was going to make some eyeballs up here. Kind of exaggerated eyeballs, maybe. When you're soldering little things to big things, you always have to heat the bigger thing first. That way it takes a little bit longer to get that up to the soldering temperature versus the little thing, which is, in this case, the silver ball. That gets up to temperature pretty readily. I think 18 gauge round for the antennas, probably. So let me find a little scrap. Let's ball up the ends just a little bit. Just a skosh. So now, 6 legs. And like I said, I think I'm going to use 14 gauge round for these. Let me find some of that. So we'll cut 2 of those. those just a skosh longer. And then these other ones, I'm going to cut them longer than they are because it'll be too hard to hold on to when I'm doing the shaping that I'm going to do. I'm probably going to use the file and the a rotary wheel with an abrasive white silicone wheel on it to carve these. These ones need to be shorter, so I'll cut these off after I shape them to the right length. Okay, so these ones are the back ones. These ones are the middle ones. Let's do the back ones. They're a little bit bigger and it'll be easier to see. I probably will do the other ones off camera just because it may take me a little while to get them all shaped how I want. These are basically going to go right there. So I think maybe right there is where we're going to make the segmentation division. So I think I might just kind of clamp this into my miter vise jig right there. Not in one of the notches, but actually just in the flat spot like that. And then I think I should be able to just kind of like relatively sharp segment. I don't want to get it so thin that it's going to break, but I do want it to have a kind of a segmented look there. So I think I'm gonna dip this in a little bit, probably with my rotary tool, and also taper this down as well, just for the sake of speed. I'm going to do a little of this in the file. I'm a little leery of getting it so thin. I got it pretty thin there. I'm going to add some solder just to make sure it doesn't break off there. I may have gotten a little overzealous. If this one seems too flimsy, I'll make another one, but let's at least shape this one. See how it looks. So I made some legs, and I think we're going to go and solder them on. I did on the initial one, I filed it too thin right here, and it broke when I was trying to thin this out a little bit. So I remade that one, and I was a little more careful not to get it quite so thin at that point in the middle. So I have some solder right here. I'm gonna go ahead and solder these on. We'll just keep adding legs. And then we can start working on those wings. Looking pretty good. So I'm going to throw him into the pickle for a little bit. And remember, we got to make 2 more wings like this. And I did cut some extra pieces at 52 millimeters, if I remember right. So we'll make these into wing shapes. I'm going to use this kind of as a guide to shape these a little bit. So sometimes when I'm bringing a number of wires together at a point, I'll file them thinner at the end. I just need a slight curve on it. So I have 3 of those now. I'm going to go ahead and make this last one off camera, and then we'll start assembling everything the rest of the way. Oh, one other thing I decided to do, and this is my wife's suggestion. So she suggested I make one of these sandwich sort of bales where it's got 2 layers with a hole between them in the shape of a honeycomb or a hexagon. So I made this out of some 18 gauge sheet, a little bit more of that 16 gauge square, and then this is actually 10 gauge square wire to create the spacers. So I'll put that at the top of the thing and make it look like the V is heading towards a honeycomb kind of shape, just to add a little feature. We'll see how it goes. So I'll be back in a minute. Got everything all put together here, so I think our next step is I want these to be soldered together. Kind of like that. So I might take a piece of this wire, just kind of feed it under there to kind of elevate this side. And I think there's likely enough solder down there to get those attached, so let's see what happens when we do that. I'm kind of going to watch the other solder joints, and when they start to flow, then I'll focus right where the 2 come together. Just to be safe. Add a little extra in there, and let's take a peek and see how it did. Those are soldered together. Okay, so let's see if we can duplicate the other side like that. I think I'm going to just file those so they're nice and flat on the ends, and then solder them to that. And then we'll add that little bail and connect it kind of to the back, I think, and then we'll let it pickle. If I complete this without messing up, this may be one of my favorite bug pieces that I've ever done. Just wet a little solder on there and hook it right kind of like that. Okay, so I'm going to pickle that for a while, and then I'll polish it up and we'll set the stones and be done. So, all right, hang loose. So I've got everything kind of polished up, and I went ahead and set the black onyx. The amber I just put in there, but I haven't actually set it yet. So I do this a little different than some people. I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers to do the bezel pushing. So we'll start with that. And after I have that laid down, then I'm going to use the rounded, smooth outer part here, and we'll burnish that top edge right where the stone and the silver come together. The amber, I got to be a little careful not to slip and scratch it. Okay. So I'll probably just do a little cleanup with the Dremel at the top of the bezel there. Overall, I'm very pleased with it. I'm not sure if I should bend these guys a little bit, maybe. They stick out. But we'll just run a chain through there and we'll get some better pictures. So I'm pleased with this one. I think it's kind of what I was shooting for, really. So, all right. All right, well, that was the Bumblebee Pendant. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And take a moment and check out my YouTube channel page, because I have, if I counted right, this is my 350th video. So there's a lot of content here, and I think you'll find that there's almost certainly something else that you'll like. So lots of projects, whether you're a beginner, somewhere in the middle, or an advanced kind of person. Good place to find some ideas. After you've done that, hit the subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a subscriber, and maybe hit the notification bell thing so that you get the notifications when I put a new video out, which is 3 times a week. It's on Thursdays, Saturdays, and Tuesdays. So, last, make sure to hit the video description down below. There's some important links there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that. There's a link to my merch store, and where you can get not only the ebook that I published about 2023's videos, which is a great guide to a whole bunch of projects with some notations and things. There's also stuff on my merch store like those design idea books that I showed you at the beginning, and those are super handy. So there's a number of other important links, so check out that description. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.